So welcome everybody on behalf of KDVI to this second in our series of learning laboratories. Before we get started and before I introduce today's speaker, I'd like to just run through a little of the etiquette of how we might approach using this hour and a half together. First of all, it would be useful if everybody during the periods when either Thomas is speaking or other people are speaking, you would keep your microphones muted to eliminate background noise. Second thing to say is that this session will be recorded, and the purpose of that will be to create some kind of transcript for people that are not able to attend. Thirdly, we will be using a technology during this short hour and a half program, which is called Mentimeter. And in order for you to fully make use of that and join with that, you will need to be using a website which is menti.com, and I'll spell that. That's MENTI.com. And if you have that browser open, either on your phone or on another device, preferably, you'll be able to then quickly access some of this technology which we're going to use during the session. We're going to have a couple of breakout sessions during this period of an hour and a half, and those breakout sessions will comprise 4, maybe 5 people. During that time, there will be Chatham House rules. What you talk about will be non-attributed, and when you return from those breakouts and you contribute to the overall plenary, we're going to ask you not to attribute who said what, but just to keep the comments more generalized, if that's possible. It's not a bad idea during those breakouts for you to have a note taker that can actually give us some kind of playback and reporting of what you've been talking about, the key themes, in order to further the general conversation when you return. And then the final thing to say is that this is not a webinar, it is a learning lab, and thereby I think it's important for us to say that we welcome all of your contributions. This is an opportunity for us to reflect and share, not necessarily to be lectured. So on that note, it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Thomas Hellwig. Thomas has multiple identities. He is a father, he is a husband, he's an associate of the KDVI Institute, of course, which is why he's here today. He's also a psychotherapist, a professor of organizational behavior at INSEAD Business School, and last and by no means least in these times, he's a medical doctor. And in fact, he has come here directly from the hospital this morning, treating people, as you'd expect, on the front line of what's going on around all of us right now, and really is one of the heroes of today amongst thousands, in fact, probably millions of colleagues across the world. And we're delighted that he can join us here today. It's going to be a very interesting and fruitful session. The subject is mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Thomas to take us through today's session. Thomas, over to you. Thank you for being here.
That's the first test whether I can unmute myself, but there we go, I did. So thank you very much for this very warm and splendid introduction. I need to now live up to the great picture that you are constructing about me. Now, I approach this thing here, first of all, probably like you might, oh, this is a webinar. But then Graham and Claire said to me, Thomas, this is not a webinar, this is the learning lab. And what does that mean? Learning probably in this phase, this is unprecedented, happens on all sides. And I took that in a way, learning will be on my side. I'm going to use certain technologies throughout, and hopefully you follow me through there to actually make that very interactive. This is certainly not a lecture. I don't come with any slide, but I come with 2 whiteboards that I will fill up with you. And hopefully in the breakout sessions, when you talk to other colleagues, you can bring in information. Now, I want to say also something about the pre-reading that some of you might have read or not. It's an article from, the medical journal of the world, the New England Journal of Medicine, which is at the moment free for those who want to register and see something what is going on in medicine. During the Corona crisis, you can actually get everything Corona related for free there. And now I just want to say, why did I put that in? So two things here perhaps. One thing is there are numerous ways in which way the coronavirus, the COVID-19, will affect all of us in one way or another. And it's there to stay. And the second thing perhaps as well is we need to look into different ways how we can help with that. And I think that's why I put it in. For some of you might say, but this is not business. I think we need to go a little bit beyond just the topic of business. So what do we do today and how do we do that? And here, following on what Graham said, will be interactive. We use something that many of you know. Mentimeter works with your phone if that's near to you. We want you very active in the breakout room sessions and do take full time of that. We want you also like through the chat room, and here perhaps Claire and Graham looking always in the chat room, and they will make me aware. I've got it open as well. It's always one way also like to communicate with me. And first and foremost, you can also of course ask questions there. But I know how it is with so many people on the call, sometimes very difficult. So I want to start a little bit here, and let me just share here my screen and going into another little device. So I want to start here by taking you a little bit into a question to be asked. It's around, it's about what is this thing that we are at the moment living? Some people saying, oh yeah, it's just a human crisis. Some people would say, well, it's a form of, how should we say that? It's a form of trauma. And some people use the word even disaster of that. Now there are many faults, and how can we think of that? What that actually is? We don't know because nobody has seen it ever before. So people struggle, and even professionals struggle. On the medical front, we struggle like how to put it into something that we might recognize. Not only like the symptoms, but also like, and here's far and foremost the topic of what's the emotional reaction to it. Now, I thought when I prepared here together with tips and tricks from Graham and Claire, a little bit like what is that? And you know, since we are confined here in France, I took it also like back to my kids, and I said, well, it's about emotional reactions. Emotional reactions, and I did recently with my kids together, somebody, a graphic designer, helped us to do a little creative class. And here's what my 14-year-old daughter actually produced when we talked about emotions and emotional reactions. Some of you are familiar perhaps that people are saying there are actually only 4 basic underlying emotions. And let me start perhaps with something here of sharing first of all what her take on that was. So some of you might recognize this wonderful picture. She took actually something that we had here, a teapot, which is in heavy use at the moment, as in some of your places probably. And we thought about what are these 4 emotions. So I found it quite amazing what she produced there. So I don't take credit for that, but it's her work. But let me just perhaps here also then say in what is that? What she produced there. So we can see here, first of all, we can see something called fear. One of the basic emotions is fear. This is not a test here for you. So what are other emotions? There's also sadness. Some call that grief, sadness. There are many words for that. This is not a language class, but then anger is another one. And you can see that probably in these wonderful drawings. And last but not least, it's the joy. Now, when you look that through, and it only actually hit me when I saw that in a way, many of our emotions, more than half, is actually negative emotions. So we might say, oh yeah, but the joy takes everything, and there's so many other good feelings. People and researchers consider that most of our emotions are actually on the negative spectrum. This is not just because we are psyche freaks or so and want to look just on the negative side, but I think it's something even like people from positive psychology do recognize, that these underlying emotions. Let me take that now in saying, what do we see, considering that many emotions could be negative? What do we see when we look at emotional reaction after a trauma, shock, or disaster? And here I searched a little bit. I went into, can we somehow have an emotional reaction curve that describes how that would look like? And yes, I do find, and many organizations actually use the same. Big organization like CDC, the Center for Disease Control, uses the similar things like others. And let me just show you the curve and show you what is behind there. So what we see here is a curve like that. We see, first of all, and I put here perhaps a little number to it. So the phase number one is the first setback. We've got basically here where you can see it, we've got the whatever that is. We've got then number one is the first setback. Then we've got, many of us might have seen that in the initial phase, perhaps here, well, what we call heroic recovery. People coming quickly out there, and they're there and there, and we love them, and they lead the pack then, and people sometimes then call that honeymoon. What happens? Honeymoon is then when we are on the peak of that initial spurt of activities. And yes, of course, we, all of us coaches or professionals in that space, know what comes then. The number four is the disillusioning or disillusionment. I saw many different ways how it was described, but I use this term here, which is most closely to CDC. Before we then come out of that in whatever way, and we talk about that one, into the reconstruction. Interesting enough, in many reconstruction, we see then the number 6 when there is a setback, a second setback. Now, you might take that in the way you want to take that. But is it really exactly like that? Can we use this model? I'm proposing that for the time being, just this could be a model that could explain us something here that could be very valuable for our work. And here we're talking about our own emotional reaction to something that happened, but also to our clients. Now I want to now quickly switch back into something. Let me go now into a different one. So many people, so you've seen these 6 phases. What I want to do with you now is moving to your mobile phone, yeah, and you see 6 phases. Very, very, very brief question is here. Think about for yourself and think about for your clients. And in a moment, now I'm gonna share with you here this one. Just 1 minute. Yeah. So you should be on your mobile phone. Now what you need now, and Graham said that already, you need the code, and you need to go to what we call menti.com. So just type into the browser of your iPhone or tablet or whatever phone, menti.com, yeah, and then you should come up on a platform where they ask you a digit code, and please put in these 6 figures, 828970, yeah, and then please, so which emotional stage are you in? So the first one is for you, and we want to see like how that looks here among you. Can you all see the code? Let me see when the first person actually hit it. It doesn't have to be just in one phase. You can be also like, oh, partially in this one, partially in that one. It's not just a black and white. Some of you might take it as a black and white. but we want to see like where we are. And you can see on the screen, so we've got 6 people who so far came in. Great. 9 people, 10 people. So we see something seems to be here. Going for the time being, we've got a close race between our honeymoon friends and the disillusioning or disillusionment. Good, we've got 18 people in. Let me just check with Alicia. Alicia, how many should we have here? A rough sketch. How many are in the session?
We've got 30, Thomas.
30. So we give it another minute. Please put in the chat if you've got technical problems on that one. So far, 2/3 of the people have managed to do that. So that's a good sign. It should work. I tested it myself. Good. Well, we stay there. Perhaps on the next one, perhaps some people do not want to share. We don't want to. This is just a little test. This is nothing scientific or so. But we see what is coming out here. So we see many people feel we are in our honeymoon. And we're still feeling like some are still in this first setback. It's almost like a nice normal distribution if you see that. Some people, they're already in their second setback. And we come to that later, what that means. But let's now move to the next one. And here, so let me just move you to the next slide now. So we're going to the next slide. And here now the question becomes, we're not talking about you, but we're now talking about your clients. You just need to do a refresh on the page that you open with your mobile phone. Yeah. And now, which emotional stage are your clients in? They might be the same, they might be different. And you can put it different. It's not just a black and white. You can be indifferent to a certain degree in this phase, to a certain degree in that phase. Yeah. So let's see how that comes up. We've got always some quick responder. That's good to see. Let's see how that comes in. Good. You're much quicker now already, like in putting that in. And you can see how the distribution also is. When I click on it, you see how that actually is distributed among the people we've got. Good. Now let's take it here and take a stand. We see, if I might say, it's a little bit of a different picture from what we see from ourselves. Now, people might say, that's interesting, why? And rather than you giving the explanation, I'm gonna wanna put you in a minute in breakout rooms. So, and I give you 15 minutes. Alicia is preparing that in a moment. In 1 minute, you're going in breakout rooms and you meet 5 random people, beautiful people from around the world. Now, what do you do in these breakout rooms in these 15 minutes? First of all, do a quick checkup. Who are you? Who are you? You might not know each other. What's my name, country, what do I do? And then come quickly into this sharing. What is sitting with you? What is sitting with you in terms of examples of what we're talking about here? Emotional reaction to this crisis we are all living through, both on the side of yourself, but also on your clients, yeah? So, basic question, what is sitting with you and your clients? Do a very, very brief introduction. I am always saying that because coaches tend to be very long on the introduction. This shouldn't take like more than 1 or 2 minutes. You've got 15 minutes in the room. There will be a little sign to warn you when we come back. But given that we need to actually plan that all a little bit here, it will be 50 minutes and not more. So we cannot leave you in your breakout rooms. Offer you here now the following. Rather than going around the room, and I know that some of you are prepared and saying, yes, I can report from the group. And in my experience in the virtual space, it always takes very long, and then sometimes we lose the momentum there. Let's do it a little bit the other way around. You all had something here on the 2 questions, and we now want to do the same thing like we did before. We switch back to your telephone, yeah, to your telephone, and then we just do another Mentimeter, yeah. And here, what I now want to do, it's an open answer. We're going to see in a moment, if you do refresh on your mobile phone, type in what are topics sitting with you, because I asked you what are topics sitting with you, what are topics sitting with the others. Hopefully that was part of the discussion you had. And now if you can write a text in for those who want even more than one, but I mean focus especially on one thing that you want to share with the group, because this way it will be up here and we all can see it and look at it. It will be anonymous, just to say that for you. We can't trace you down, and it will not appear on the screen there what you said or so. Yeah. Okay, something went wrong, I hear. Can people not access it? Oh, that's coming in, yeah. Good. Boredom, acceptance, lack of connections, tiredness. Clients seem to be in honeymoon phase, but if you dig a little, they're actually in a freeze state regarding key existential questions, financial distress, multiple cycling. How's the curve developing in loops, in iterations, anticipating second setbacks? The thoughts, how do I re-strategize myself in the new paradigm? Confusion, uncertainty of the future. Yeah, we see, you can see there's are introverts better? What did quite see that? What did come in? No. So insomnia and a big stress I have to deal with at work, short-term survival programs. Introverts better, off or worse, mixed emotions. So we see like many people, so we've got here more than 37. Some people joined the call even a little bit later, but you see that coming, and I let you browse through that. We capture that at the end, and you get all of that when we close the webinar. Let me now go. So don't now type in anymore, and let's just go back into the next one. So we now want to in the next question. So the first one was about you. Now we're here when you do so you should have now, when you do put refresh, now you can actually then so it's now about your clients. Let's see what comes up here. Oh, there seems to be a refreshing going on. Well, that's nice sort of things on the net sometimes. So you see what you've already put in there. Firefighting, how to keep things going. They have clear objectives. How to recover and rebuild. Tired, disillusionment. What is the new normal? No reflection time. Economic survival. Let's all just try to continue as if nothing strange is going on. Let's hide it. If we don't talk about it, yeah. Wouldn't it be nice? how to manage kids in work relationship. And I want to say like, well, that's good that this comes up as well. My kids playing next door, I need to be a homeschool teacher as well. And many of you have to be, and I haven't been trained for that one either. Survival and lack of visibility is making people exhausted. Absolutely. Interesting enough, I want to say like, well, we talked about that 3/4 of the primary emotions are actually negative. I want to say this is a massively negative emotional reaction that we're seeing here coming up. Now, please stop for the time being now putting that in. It still remains open, but I just want to switch back to something here now and go into, take you back into what we had before. Let's go back to our little graph, and that little graph where we looked at beforehand. So you're familiar with the graph already. So what I find interesting, first of all, essentially what people recognize when they talk about that, and when you see the amount of information and negative feelings that is going on there, essentially people recognize in the medical field that recovery work or emotional reactions after trauma is essentially grieving, a grieving work. So that means like our way to think about grieving is, one is about what can I do for myself? And that means like also reaching out to others. So that's one thing. And one thing is about for the others. And this sort of for the others is, how can I accompany them by doing that? And that can be your own colleagues, that can be your clients, that can be your family. My family, my kids, actually, I see that after 5 weeks in confinement, actually have highs and lows, as I have highs and lows. The moment when I recognize that. So these others is actually, I want to put these others into one line, is probably family, friends. Let's put it a big F, and then the P on the professional side. Some people put P and P, professional and personal side, whatever. You can manage that for yourself. But essentially it's grieving work. Here's one other comment I want to make on that curve before leaving that and before going into another round when we want to talk a little bit about more in the groups. I always thought about this curve like, oh, it's a linear curve and the axis of time is actually linear on that. And that's actually a false belief. So people who work more with trauma, with stress, with disasters, what they recognize is actually the initial phase. Yeah, and the initial phase, if I might want to just put that here for a little moment, it's from here to that first downside. Yeah, this initial phase, I thought of that, well, that can be probably long time. People consider that rather days or weeks. Yeah, days or weeks. So it's either days, 2 weeks. Yeah. And that depends on the person, organization, whatever. What is then the interesting bit is, what coming afterwards is, that phase, people consider, no matter what the trauma was, goes for years. And that's an interesting notion that I want to share with you here. We all are longing to our governments and looking to our governments to say, when do you let us out of the house? And essentially, we as professionals, we need to take that by saying like, the work of grieving, the work of the reconstruction, the recovery, with certain setbacks, whether it's only one or several setbacks, is there to stay in one way or another. And that one, I think, is for me profoundly something that thinks or changes the way I think about the work that is coming. And I want to also give that to you. It should change about the way that you look at the time after the crisis as well. Our work is grieving. You are there, whether you're running you're an executive in a company, whether you are in working here as a coach or so, but it's the grieving work. And let me just do here, I know that some people hate that and some people don't mind, but I find, and that's also in terms of best practice of how to work virtually, sometimes cold calling can be something important, yeah, because it engages me with you and it engages us with. So I have looked through who is in the room and so, and I just want to test a couple of things, whether they're now in the room, whether they left to go to have a coffee or so, I don't know. But I just want to test just one simple question. First, where do you feel most of the people are among your own team? And if you share can you share one anecdote, what you discussed in the previous group setting? Yeah. So if I could pick perhaps on Marcus Hoban, not sure Marcus whether you're here in the call. I saw you earlier, but can you unmute yourself and see whether you want to share something?
I think Thomas, I think he might have been logged out of the call. He's no longer on the call, yeah.
Good. Let me then test Patrick. Patrick, are you around?
I am, yes, Thomas.
Patrick, can you, I mean, you're an investment banker and people might say, oh, that doesn't affect me. No, tell us about, well, what did you discuss in the group?
Yeah, I was in banking and then took the MCC module, and I've started a startup since. So we have gone into a very different phase in my life. I think across the five of us, five gentlemen, to say coaches in banking, I think there's the one thing that came out is perhaps taking day by day, so disillusionment, and then breaking it down to smaller bits that are digestible and trying to deal with these smaller bits. That's one thing that I perhaps personally took out of it.
Great, thank you. Let me also, like, not only on cold calling, open question. Is there anybody else from his or her group who wants to share? So this is now like you can share. I don't want to pick on you here.
This is Uche. From our group, something that I found quite interesting and a good reminder. There's the movie Groundhog Day, where there was this constant, repeat of the day, and I thought it was really good because yes, we can all be so in what we are doing that it just reminded me to take a step back and actually look at my day and figure out, is my day actually just repeating itself, even though I feel like I'm moving forward? So am I a hamster in a wheel, a lot of activity versus productivity, or am I actually being very productive? And it was just a really good illustration or imagery that reminded me of the importance to step back and make sure you're not having cycles in your days.
Great. Perhaps one more person?
Yeah, I want to add something to that same comment. This is Anna. I made a comment about this movie, and I think also in that movie, the guy sometimes at certain point in time, he finds a way of unlocking his day. So this is, I think, the search here. What are we learning in this phase? How we can unblock this? Because we are not going to create a vaccine. We are not going to control a lot of things. So this is, to me, that movie was very insightful at this point in time.
May I say something?
Yeah.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes, I found very interesting the Ramadan factor that Ramadan is coming up in 2 days, and it's all about sharing, social gathering, spiritual. But right now, the last thing we can do is social gathering. And so I find that it's like a gap. All of a sudden, what you've been doing for your whole life and what's part of your core and your religion and your beliefs has been destroyed. There's a big upset. So I feel for that. It's very confusing. It's created conflict, confusion. What are we going to do? Are we going to obey? Are we not going to obey? So for me, that was high impact.
Great. Let me just take it now back. Now, all of you shared comments already, and that's good. I now want to, in a moment, set you up in a second round, because we just don't want to stop in describing what the situation is. Patrick made the comment already, what can help us there? And I want to put it under the title of emotional healing. Emotional healing, you know? And these emotional healings can have many different forms. Now in the next phase, we put you in breakout rooms again for 15 minutes. So Alicia, in about 1 minute, you can set them up. You can already prepare that. Yeah. It might be not the same breakout rooms. So that means like you meet new people. And that means like, don't do the introduction now in all lengths. It can be very short. And then quickly going to that, we all know what we talk about. So how can we deal with this grieving work? How can we actually help for ourselves and for our clients with this grieving work? And I put it here in a medical term by saying like healing. How can we deal with that healing and help with that healing? And that's, again, the two levels are for ourselves and for our clients. Yeah? So you know how it works already. You will be in a moment in the room. You get a warning before we come back. It's 15 minutes, not more. And then we meet here again in the plenary. Good. Now, rather than now going into listening to you, we want to now go into, I need to do screen sharing. I share my screen with you. And you take your mobile phone again, yeah? And we're going back to the Mentimeter, yeah? So menti.com for those who joined later. And now, of course, it's another question. We talked about this emotional healing. So there we go. If you can now type in what can help with the healing for us. So that means for you, what can help with the healing for us? It's an open question, so you can type in for those who don't know how that works. So this emotional healing can help for me.
Mentimeter is not refreshing. We're getting what our topic with your clients still.
Okay. If you refresh,
it's still the same.
Okay, then let me just do reloading the page. And then if you just bear with me 1 second, this can sometimes happen in the time when everything is overloaded, or the internet providers, and we just need to learn what we are all very bad in being patient.
Mine is asking for the code again. Do you mind reminding the code?
Yeah, it will show up in a moment. If you just wait for a little moment, it now refreshes, and then usually it comes then up very well. So,
it's 828970.
Yeah. But it will show in a moment here on the screen. There we go.
Seems to work now.
Great. So type it in. So for yourself, and you see that what can help. Exercise. Great. Dancing, be active, learn new skills, meditation, serenity prayers. reflection, meditation, end of this madness. Releasing pressure, value, being vulnerable, learning little learning steps, live in the present. Vulnerability comes up several times there, staying grounded through mindfulness and gratitude, accept, focus on what I have and can put energy into. Reflection, being open to the uncertainty, find progressive habits. Now, so we just give another 30 seconds for those who still want to type something in. So we then move to the next one. Being okay, being vulnerable. So the vulnerability aspect comes up very much. Okay, doesn't seem to have more for the time being. Good. And then let's move to the next slide. And here, let's see whether it works. So not only for ourselves on a personal level, personal, professional, but also what helps in terms of the healing for your clients, for our clients. Same code, you just need to refresh on the page. Empathy we hear. We use fees. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Listening, feel attention, compassion. Good. Time to reflect and listen. Being with them, creating space to share emotions, thoughts. Real listening. Yeah. Good. So we're going to capture all of that, and this space actually stays open. I'm just taking that away now here, and we'll go again into a different mode. And I just want to bring that a little bit together. Now, let me share again what we had before here. And we're coming back into now something you saw before. I call it emotional healing. Some people refer to different terms, but talking about emotional healing. And what is this emotional healing about? So interesting, when you look through many of the comments you've written in there, certain words come there up more often. And many of you are familiar. This is not a concept that I developed, but already when I talked in the title about there's spiritual, there's emotional, there's physical, there's mental. Many of you are familiar that, well, if we do take that in, so yes, indeed, there are, if we think about the emotional healing, certain aspects that play a role. And these aspects are the following: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Now, let me just go here and develop that a little bit further. This is certainly a concept that many of you are familiar, but what does it mean? What can we do to help here? And here I want to say, first and foremost, is probably around, well, helping them, putting the heart and the head together and balancing out. So balancing out on many of these different things. And what does it mean? There's always almost like dichotomies sometimes what is happening in these different spaces. And the more for ourselves and for others, we can help the others to help them to go through these dichotomy, different things that are in my head. And let me start perhaps, I use here always two terms. Some people are saying, oh, why are they there? From concepts that many of you are familiar. Let me start here, perhaps here up there. So on the mental side, so here I want to relate to two concepts. By the way, I did put away my beautiful drawings there that I did beforehand. So two concepts here, and here I want to say, like, many of you are familiar. It comes from leadership concept from Ron Heifetz, and we're talking about being on the balcony and being on the dance floor. Now, many of our leaders at the moment, many of my clients, they're essentially on the dance floor, operational all the time. But they can't take this sort of taking a bigger view on where are we strategically? How do we think not just about tomorrow to survive, but also like how can we go a little bit beyond that? So helping that it's not either or, but how can we actually link these two things together? Let me now take here on the next slide, the physical. So on the physical, I should take these ones off. On the physical also too, one is of course the mind and one is the body. Many of you saying it's also physically activity, but it's also mental activity that is important here. If we do balance between these two different mindsets, these two different things, we can work on the physical side. I never talk about physical as just whether I'm running outside, but it's always the health of body and mind for me. Now let's talk about the emotional side. And the emotional side, I would say we already talked about the work of grieving. So always making time, this sort of grieving work is part of what we need to do for ourselves, but also others to help with that. And that can be sometimes through emotional check-in with your teams, with your clients, and saying, how are you? But actually, how are you? And listening to the answer. So listening to the answer, if people grieve, then I need to, and some people put that already in what we saw there, empathy. So we need to sometimes listen to others and being there to help them with their grieving, but also help others need to help us with our grieving. And of course, sometimes, not always, I would say yes, always, what helps us on the spiritual side, I want to say purpose first of all. Purpose. What's the purpose? Why do we do all of that? And here, I'll take it slightly different. What's the dichotomy with purpose? There cannot be, because purpose is everything. I want to put here something that helps, especially when we're working in the professional space there. I want to also put the word performance into that. Because many people, they talk about performance. And the moment when we completely leave it out, I think we are not doing the right thing. We need to, when there's a purpose, it doesn't fill my pocket. It doesn't make my kids eat tomorrow. But I need to also like balance that out with the performance that I can actually do. Now, I'm not saying this concept here that I've drawn up for you explains everything. But what I'm suggesting to you is, in the first part, we looked into where we're standing, and it's interesting, there was a difference between where we're standing and where we see our clients are standing, which I am happy for those who want to link afterwards to actually talk about that, but that's interesting. But we talked about what is this emotional reaction and that we're going through phases. In the second part, we are all part of the problem, part of the solution of helping ourselves and others with emotional healing. And I think this is for me something in the age and time where we stand, where actually I feel like, well, this is somehow promising, because that gives us something what we can actually live on and work off. Now, I'm happy to deepen that a little bit. There's next week another seminar, which is not the same title. I'm not repeating the same one, but we're deepening the work here and taking certain aspects a little bit further. Now, of course, there could be always like time for question here, but I know that one of the things Germans always need to do, they need to finish in time. So I want to give the word back to Graham, who nicely introduced me here. Graham and Claire, who are the masters of this workshop here. I want to say here, first of all, goodbye, because it's an exciting time and you helped me learning, using different tools, of using different things. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you attending here, bringing your mind in there. As a follow-up, there will be certainly, we send around the capture of the Mentimeter and the capture of the two slides that we created here a little bit together. But then also, there will be then the opportunity next week. There's another seminar, which I would be delighted if you come again. Graham and Claire, over to you.
Thomas, I want to thank you on behalf of KDVI for delivering a really stimulating and provocative and thoughtful session. I think, you know, these last moments where you revealed the dichotomies around these four different elements was, you know, in and of itself something we could talk about for a couple of hours, but it was terrific. And your use of technology is exceptional, and just putting these two things together, giving people the opportunity to talk and think this stuff through, was really great use of 90 minutes of everybody's time. Thanks on behalf of KDVI again. Thank you to all of you for joining. We really look forward to having you join Thomas on his sequential session, or if not, to join the next one, which will be Roger Lehman talking about fault lines. So thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, everybody. Thanks and take care. Bye-bye.